And welcome to episode 4 of Myths and Stories, featuring Mythborn and Ztorialis.
Look at that, we got...
Yes.
Yeah. It's an intro and everything.
I know.
Alright, so, as we're picking up on part 2 of our two-part bit about the story of the Awoken, our original. First part was the kind of origins of the Awoken, where they came from, and their time in the Distributary, and leading all the way up till they left the group that followed Mara, left the Distributary, and had just come forth back into the Soul System with the intentions of trying to reconnect with the humanity that they had left behind, and provide assistance, because they were in a bad way. So, yeah, yep.
One of our brightest returns. Hopefully, this is as sturdy as you are. This was made for you. No, I forget what his pre-risen name was, but I do remember them saying personality-wise he's mostly the same.
Checking.
Yep, dead orbit. Yep. And say it's going to be interesting, and I want to talk to you a little bit about some of those figures, because for me at least, reading through it, was a little unclear as to how many of them came over with Mara originally, other than Sur and Aldrin, and how many of them are Reef born after they come through. Because there's a significant amount of time that happens between certain events, and the entire time the group that has left the Distributary is now, by leaving that place, has become mortal, and now has to worry about things like, carrying on generations in order to keep their species alive. Yeah.
That smell when you crack heavy ammo open. Sublime. Job go all right?
Yep, they just relinquish power. Yep, that died during the Odyssey, the Odyssey War. Yep.
Scared to look at the news these days.
Yeah. So with all that in mind, we come back to Mara and her crew have just entered into the solar system. and are now at the point where they have been aware of the soul system, and to a certain extent they are aware that the humanity they left behind is dwindling, is under attack by the fallen. But that's kind of all they know. They know very broad strokes about what has happened. So the very first thing that they do once they enter back into the soul system is they take stock of things, and they find that not only is humanity dwindling, not only is humanity kind of congregated around the at that time dormant orb of the traveler, but that most of the system in general at this point is under constant threat from the fallen. And that something to remember is that in this time period, when they've come back to, the fallen are a very different beast than what we see now. Not physically, but culturally, and just pure numbers. They have all the houses are currently represented in full, and they are very much leading towards the extinction of humanity. Oh, let's see. So, well, definitely the ones that we know of from in-game are all in full force. So, Dusk, Wolves, Devils, yeah, Judgment. Say, I know there's plenty I'm missing, but yeah, they are in full scavenger mode. They're raiding human settlements to try and get technology. They are the space pirates. They are the big bads of the world right now. The Hive are not really a presence at this time. The Vex are to a degree, but mostly on Mercury. The Awoken do, in their cursory, scans of the system and whatnot, do note that there are machines that are terraforming different planets. They do name Mercury, they name Nessus, but it's not their main concern. Yeah. Yep. But they no, not to make it livable. But they know that they're there, but they're not the main concern. The big bads are the fallen. And so the Awoken see this. They see the dire situation that is happening, and the entire reason that they were convinced to come over is that they owed a debt to humanity, that they were just refugees from this war, and they were supposed to come back and help people with their technology and their medicine and their, all of this they had gained from their time at the distributary. Yeah, and that's another thing to point out. Everyone that has come through this portal 12.1 billion years old. Though time was stopped for them aging-wise while they were there. It has now since started back up. But there's a huge wealth of information and knowledge and experiences that all of these people are bringing with them. And a very large portion of the Awoken that come over with Mara see the dire state of the universe, and want to immediately offer help. They want to immediately offer their aid to the survivors on Earth, saying, like, this is our purpose, this is why we came here in the first place, let's go right now and, and help these people. And Mara she wants to take a more measured approach. Her argument is, look, we can't help anyone if we can't help ourselves first. We need to build up our settlement. We need to get ourselves, organized and have a concrete foundation, and then go out and provide assistance. Because otherwise, we're going to be
you know, we're going to be hurting ourselves more than we're helping them. And
Isn't just a title. It's a promise.
yeah, they.
Good luck, Guardian.
You can upgrade the armor, but it's still just a cargo freighter.
Yes, and I think there's also something that's discovered after they go into the Soul System. They're doing scans not only on the system but on themselves, because they themselves are different, having come out of the distributary back into, you know, quote unquote normal time. And I think Mara is aware of this to some degree, but her scientists at that point discover that, and we talked a little bit about this, the Awoken have this like paracausal effect about them. Energy that passes through their body is slightly permanently changed when it comes out the other side. And that entire effect, that entire like magic, quote unquote, is centered around Mara as the nucleus. It is the strongest around her, and her presence literally nullifies harmful particles, like harmful radiation and other things that are just out there that would otherwise be affecting her people in a negative way. Uh, don't 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 have a negative effect while she's near them. Her presence literally makes them safer, literally protects her people. And I think she's aware of that on some level, and that's also why she wants people close to her. She wants everyone nearby because she can make them, you know, she can make sure that they continue to exist for longer. But needless to say, there's some dissent. It's a little bit of everything from the sounds of it. Yeah, so and there's a spot that's described in the riots that we're about to talk about that also leads into that. But I would say she and the Awoken people in general have, well, we've talked about it, they have a touch of light and dark, and light and dark are two paracausal entities, and it looks like she has absorbed that to some degree. She's just has that inherent ability to her, and all the Awoken do, but she being the first and being at the epicenter of those two energies meeting, is where all the other people's powers kind of stem from. So she's kind of, in a couple different ways, I guess, she is to the Awoken as the Traveler is to Guardians, just on a much, you know, weaker scale.
Guardian down.
Yeah.
Guardian down.
Yep. Yep. And even they don't have a good grasp on exactly what it is. And later on, during our talk tonight, Mara kind of leans into that. She leans into the mystique. She uses that. And there's a number of reasons for that. But coming back a little bit. So the group of the Awoken want to leave. Mara says, "No, let's stay. Let's build a base, get ourselves situated, and then help." This group riots. Like they essentially say that no, they need to go, and they're not going to listen to anyone telling them different. There's a small.
This is not unlike the
Yep.
Ascendant plane.
Yep. There's a small skirmish in the Reef. No one's reported as being killed or injured in this skirmish, but rioters want to leave, and they're going to do so by force if they have to. And so Mara attempts to keep them there at first, and then as she sees ships leaving and ships have been built specifically so that she would not have control over them because they're not of Awoken technology, she reluctantly submits to the resolve of these rioters, of these people that want to leave, and she broadcasts out a message. Well, actually, she tells Sir, I believe, to broadcast a message on all the, on all radio channels so that all her people will hear, saying that, if people want to leave, we're going to give you this one and only chance. We're not going to stop you. You can leave in peace, but if you're going to do it now, essentially. And Sir responds back to her and says, there's no need for me to broadcast this message in a traditional sense, because all of the Awoken have literally heard you in their head as you've said this, which yes. Yeah, it's kind of like that sixth sense that they describe Mara having, in that we talked about in the first part of this. It's like they all have it now, and they all have it tied to her. Maybe so. I mean, I almost think it has to be intentional, because she was literally an omnipotent and omnipresent god in the distributary. So like, it's almost like she couldn't, even if it was impossible for her to do something without intending to, because by definition of omnipotent, she knows everything. So I have to assume that's intentional, and probably as a means to have some kind of connection with her people, in a metaphysical sense. But so with this exodus, the Awoken are now divided again. They call them twice riven, into the Earthborn and the Reefborn. The Earthborn being those that return to humanity, and they did so bringing weapons and industry and medicine and all of those experiences from their time at the distributary, and they're seen by the survivors of humanity as these saviors. They don't quite attribute them to like godhood or whatnot, but they see them as like these saving angels, these people that have come home to lift them up into a better life, and they do, for the most part. They really do. And time passes. The Earthborn Reef, the Earthborn Awoken that left the Reef, begin to mingle with humanity. They help them build cities and towns and defend themselves, and they start to build families with humans. And you see Earthborn Awoken create families not only with each other, but with humans that are found there. And they create future generations that are now crosses between the two. And over time, the Distributary and the Reef and all of that, everything they came from through generations and generations and generations fades from memory for a lot of them. And you end up with people that are awoken by race that do not know anything about where they came from. Do not know the Reef exists, do not know that Mara exists, but all awoken feel this little itch, this little pull in the back of their head, that if any of them were to follow it, always leads them back to the Reef and to Mara. So, after the exodus of Earthborn Awoken, Mara declares herself queen of the Reefborn, essentially putting into words what everyone had kind of already known. But she had been trying to skirt authority, the official title. No. And her reasoning goes back to her whole original theory about communication that we talked about in the first part. She states, people need secrets to revere. They cannot have faith in something if they completely understand it. So from her point of view, she needs to become this mysterious, secretive figure, that is above, aloof to all of the other Awoken, in order for them to be able to put faith in her. And her reasoning is that, essentially, yeah, she wants something that people will revere and people will worship to a degree. And in order to give them the ability to fill in the gaps themselves, to be okay with worshiping her, she needs to not tell them everything. Yeah. Yep.
Gloria has been commanding the other Vex, poisoning their minds, directing them at Savathun's will. The endless night is of Savathun's design.
It would seem the Witch Queen has outmaneuvered us. But perhaps she did not count on us seeing her hand so soon.
Then we strike
Yes.
now. Miss Brax and I will lead forth.
Yeah, and so she does a few things as her kind of first acts as queen. She renames the Utics from the Distributary, the scientists that followed her from the Distributary. She renames them as Techians and gives them full authority to study the new Awoken paracausality and any relics of the Traveler, saying, we are no longer in the realm of pure science. We require an order of mystery and witches to tend to them. So again, leaning into this idea of, not only are things very different than they were in the Distributary. The Distributary was a world as Mara, literally as Mara put it together, with the rules she decided. This world they're in now has its own rules, and there are powers here that didn't exist in the Distributary. Light and dark were not a thing in the Distributary. So she is now giving her scientists full authority to study and understand, and also puts that air of mystery around these Techians, again, so that people will revere them, will see them as wise and as more knowing than the general populace. Shiochi is the Techian, yep. Well, I know Ilin is another big one. I say, yes, I believe so, something like that. I didn't think to put the names on here, unfortunately. Mm. Okay. Yes. And yeah, and she is still very important to the world of the Awoken in a different way now. Um, and I guess now is also probably a good time. I should have said this at the beginning. There are a few things that this is going to be the abridged version of. So specifically, I'm going to touch very lightly on the Reef War. Uh, it, there are some things that happened during the Reef War that are very cool and very important to the Destiny world, but not as integral to the Awoken and the Dreaming City and all that. I'm also gonna leave the Shattered Throne as its own thing, because that is very relevant but kind of adjacent to everything else going on. Yeah. But okay, so back to Mara. She's declared herself queen. She's declared the Techians having authority to do these studies, and she's done all of this knowing that there's an impending attack coming from the Fallen. Enough of the Earthborn Awoken have been out in the system now that the Fallen are going, hey, there's some blue dudes. Where'd these guys come from? Like, and he's so excited about it. uh, yeah. No, he's so happy to have an enemy to like to sharpen himself against, essentially. Yeah. Um. So, and that just again that informs his entire character. Is that idea? Yep. Yeah, which now that I'm thinking about it, he has a very sword logic mindset. He has a he has a very like either I survive or it does, and it needs to be me. Like that's kind of his whole thing. Maybe I'm just saying, if we see Crow throw in stasis, maybe watch him. Okay. You know, it wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world. Uh, and yes, yes, we need to do a whole thing on Crow and Aldrin because he has fascinating stories that are already happening in the background. Um, but yes, that will be another day. No, I would agree with that, but I'm gonna steer us back. Um, so Fallen are attacking the reef. They want to know where this new enemy is coming from, and they identify as all of these people, had this origin point of this asteroid belt, Vesta 4 asteroid belt. And so a particular baron uh, essentially musters up a fallen fleet, and attacks. Just drives in the middle of the reef and is like, I'm gonna find out what's here and mess it up. Yeah. So the way the battle progresses is maybe not what you'd think initially. Especially and reading through the lore cards, the Awoken fight back very briefly but very hard. At the very beginning, they see these ships and they have all of these matter rifle weapons that they brought from the distributary, and they essentially just fire all of them at the ships that they see. Yep. We're just gonna do it one fell swoop. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The thing the Awoken do not consider at the time is they've only ever fought each other, and even then only very briefly in the distributary. They had the war that claimed less than 1,000 Awoken lives, and that was a huge thing for them. Like, they are used to battles with a hyper value of life during those battles. The Fallen do not have that. The Fallen do not care. And what has happened now is the Awoken have fired all of these awesome high-powered weapons that take forever to reload, and that they cannot do another volley of in time to combat the fallen fleet that's starting to circle, because they didn't get them all in one shot. They got a couple ships, but that was about it. And so the Awoken people, the Awoken soldiers, start to flee, because not only have they kind of shot their shot and it didn't do it, but they're now also mortal. They now know the fear of death of an enemy that is intent on killing them. And so their initial response after their attack is fear, is to be afraid and to start to retreat. And 3 Awoken march forward and fight back, and that's Syr, Mara, and Aldrin. And Mara specifically makes a very conscious decision to enter battle completely unarmored. To enter battle with no helmet, no armor, just some weapons, just some knives, essentially, and to be a show for her people, and it works. Her Awoken people see her unarmored and vulnerable, but still charging into the middle of these Awoken of these fallen combatants, and it shames them. It shames them at their initial fear, at their initial want to retreat, and so they. Right, over our mission. And so that spurs them into action, and they rally around their queen, and they start to fight the Fallen in truth. And Syr is the one that ends up killing the Baron that has brought the Fallen here. And she intends to blow up the Ketch, the capital ship in the fleet. And she knows, she has had a premonition. she knows that this is where she dies. That she dies in detonating this ship. And so she goes through with it. You know, she knows what's going to happen. She throws charges into the engine core. The entire ship explodes, takes out a good portion of the fleet around it. This leads to their victory, essentially. And she's come to terms with the fact that, like, this is the end of her life. This is where she was meant to be. But she's thrown from the explosion, completely unharmed, not a scratch on her. And then she didn't. She knew. Yeah. Because up until... Yep. Right, because this was supposed to be her end. She was confident in it. She knew that there was nothing for her after that moment. And now that there just suddenly is a future, she kind of doesn't know what to do with it.
You captured Zone B. You have Zone
And
Front.
when, right after the explosion, as she comes out of it and realizes that she has survived, you know, she kind of thinks to herself, like, no, that was it. That was where I was supposed to die. And all she sees in her mind in response to this question of why am I still alive is just essentially Mara smirking. As a way of, like, Mara actively saved her, you know, used her paracausality, used something. We're not 100% sure the exact mechanisms, but she is the reason Sir survived that
You
explosion.
took them. Now hold them.
Because of the light.
Zone A lost.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. So, not derailing, but I'm just gonna drop this little tidbit because you meant, you know, because of I think you're right. There's a hand of the light in this. The dark only takes, the light only gives. And so it has given Sir a second chance. So the Reefborn Awoken, they survive this attack, and Mara tries to use this attack as a way to rally those that left for Earth, the Earthborn Awoken, back, saying, like, you know, we've had this enemy come for us, we fought them back, but we need to rally, you know, circle the tents, we need to bring everyone back in. Yep. But needless to say, that call mostly falls on deaf ears. Those that have left remain gone, with a few exceptions, I'm sure. But generally speaking, it's a failure to get them to come back.
Zone B lost.
There was a little tidbit in this portion that I thought was interesting regarding Aldrin. So Aldrin tells Mara that the Fallen Baron had not transmitted the location of the reef to any other Fallen. that he had been greedy. He had wanted to take everything for himself, so he didn't tell anyone where he was going.
5 minutes remain. A strong start. Fight on.
Yeah. Right. Yep. Yeah. So, top dog. So what that means is that the reef is still safe, quote unquote safe. There isn't another force on the way to come get them, as far as they know. And this bit was the one I found interesting in particular. So in this conversation between Aldrin and Mara, he states that he respects the Fallen, that he respects their tenacity and their dedication to their system. He finds it fascinating that they have this ritualistic like docking of limbs. And he's everything about the Fallen he's like enamored by. He's not gonna not defend against them, but he has a very deep-seated respect for his enemy. And Mara kind of notes this to herself. She doesn't tell it out loud, but she notes to herself that like her brother has finally found his true people, which I thought was interesting given the relationship Aldrin has with Fallen now. He's very much an advocate for them.
Tell them to line up.
Yeah,
fast.
yep.
You have advantage. Three minutes.
Yeah, the scoring. Yep.
Stay
Scoring.
strong.
Scoring, yeah. Yeah, it's just kind of informing his nature a little more. I just love that they have these pieces, these little threads of his personality and his thoughts and feelings towards other races. All that we see now are rooted all the way back in his origins, and I like those connections are there. But so, battle is won. Mara now establishes a couple different divisions within the Awoken. She establishes the Paladins to be her military commanders and defend the Reef. And she establishes the Corsairs, who have the job of exploration. They're the scouts, essentially. Explore the Reef in secret, establish ship routes, and know what are the escape patterns to the Reef, and map it out, kind of. But she realizes that the Reef, although is a good foothold in the system, it's not really a place to build a home for the Awoken people. Yep. Correct, yes.
1 minute. Won't be long now. A victory well executed.
Yeah.
You fight like a demon for these zones. Bring me your friends.
Yeah.
I need
It's
more like you.
pure, unshakable confidence in whatever the Queen is doing. And for Seer in particular, yes. And for Seer in particular, I don't know if this is the intention, but you kind of get the feeling that Mara created that position not only out of necessity, out of having a position of authority for Seer, but also as a replacement for a formal, like, I don't want to say marriage, but like a formal relationship. Like that's kind of as close as they can get without it turning it, because Mara needs to remain the queen. There can be no other, other next to her in the hierarchy, so this is kind of the next closest thing. No. Go. Mm-hmm. So I would say, and I have some lore bits coming up here to back this up. I would say in the case of Petra Venge, it is the latter. To have a confidant, a friend, in an official capacity. In the case of Sir Ido, it is both. Not only in the case of a confidant and a friend that she can turn to, but also as a lover. Wasn't kidding. So there's a whole episode for Sir Ido, believe me. That we're little bits are only the relevant parts are going to be talked about here. But yeah, that she has her own really cool story that's kind of tangential to everything that's happening with Mara. But they were unequivocally and undeniably in a romantic relationship. Probably for quite some time, because it's implied that this is since some point in the distributary. So potentially billions of years these two have been together. But we'll pin that. It will come back up a little bit here later. So we're going back a little bit. They've survived this attack. Mara's established some groups within the Awoken. But like I said, she's identified that the Reef is a wonderful stronghold. It has served their purpose well as being a base of operations, but it is not a home. It is not a place to build the culture of the Awoken in the Soul System. I think that's literally what it was. Well, I think it was the closest location to the exit of the distributary that served a strategic purpose. That would serve as a strategic base of operations. Is how I took it. But yeah, she knows they need somewhere for culture to flourish. She needs somewhere for the Awoken to, truly become themselves and study and, figure out what their race is going to be in this new world. And nowhere evolves culture faster than a city, a large congregation of people. And the Reef is just asteroid belts. Yep. All it is. No. Nope. I say the largest section of the Reef. It is part of the Reef.
Zone advantage is yours.
It is part of the Reef, yep. Yep. is that kind of thing. The Tangled Shore is just an area within the reef, and it is in some cases it is literally, so there's a little skip in the head, but it has been literally constructed in a lot of instances. If you take your Sparrow and, you know, around the Tangled Shore through the different areas, you'll see the bridges of those areas are almost always like constructed things linking these asteroids together.
Zone C lost.
Mm-hmm.
You captured Zone A. You have zone advantage.
Yeah. So, yeah, so Tangled Shore, part of the Reef. The Reef, not a great home. Great HQ, not a great home. And so Aldrin, you know, Mara tells Aldrin this, like, we need a city, we need a place for our people. And Aldrin says, like, well, where? Like, you know, how are we going to do that in an asteroid belt? Like, how do we build here? And have it not be a vulnerability? Have it not be a place for enemies to attack? And so Mara throws it right back at him and says, well, fine, you figure it out, essentially. Yeah. She tasks Aldrin. Right? So she tasks Aldrin with, and literally her words, find a power unknown to all other powers in this world. Return with it, and I shall make it the cornerstone of our new city, where the Awoken shall dream of all they have been and all that is to come. So, spoilers, Dreaming City. So Aldrin goes out.
Zone A lost.
Yep.
Power play. Get those zones back.
Yeah. Yep. No, So Aldrin goes out to find this power unknown to other powers, that's going to build their city. That's going to become the core of their new home. And while he's out, no, excuse me. So he goes out. He returns after some time, after scouring all of the worlds of the solar system. He returns with a small creature. And I had originally thought that this was an egg, but it is not. It is an actual creature at the time. And he tells her, behold, the lie that makes itself true. This is an Ahamkara. And that... Oh yeah, it fits in the palm of his hand. It's tiny. And so, this brought about a question for me, not to derail our discussion, but a little tangent, brought about a question for me. Did Ahamkara only exist in the Sol system after the collapse? Because I don't think we have any record of them during the Golden Age, and I would think that they would have been discovered at some point during the Golden Age. Right, and can you imagine if Clovis got his hands on one of these things? Like...
You captured Zone C. You have zone advantage. Zone B lost. Zone A captured. You have zone advantage.
Right? So this little Ahamkara has been presented as a gift to Mara, as it has powers that are not understood or not contained by any other power in the solar system. And so Mara has, for lack of a better term, a discussion with this Ahamkara. And the Ahamkara...
3 minutes. You're winning. Stay strong.
There's a...
Capture. Zone advantage is yours. You captured Zone C. Power play. Keep the pressure on.
So specifically,
Zone A lost.
this is, yeah. I don't believe so, because this is the first mention of them in the Soul system. It is not the first mention of them ever. Again, not to derail, but there is a lot of heavy evidence suggesting that Ahamkara lived on Fundament before the Hive became the Hive. So I don't. Yeah, well, they speak about dragons in the sky of Fundament, and so a lot of people are attributing that to potentially Ahamkara, especially with the Traveler being there. All of that is completely separate from this. Different story. Needless to say, they have found a baby Ahamkara. Mara has entered into a covenant with it. She's the only one that is allowed to establish this covenant, this contract with his Ahamkara. And the Ahamkara decides to call itself Riven in honor of the twice Riven Awoken. And we don't have any record of anyone having a conversation with an Ahamkara at all. Like, generally speaking, it's been, someone will find it and wish for something, or someone will find it and kill it, and like that's kind of all we've had up till now. Yeah.
You captured Zone C. Zone advantage is yours.
Right. Now, Mara is a unique situation, because Ahamkara, and we don't fully understand how this works, but Ahamkara feed off of the desire. They feed off of, and it's quoted as the difference between reality as is and reality as desired. So it's not necessarily that they feed off of people's wishes. They feed off the want for something, that they want for something that they don't have. But for Mara's case, Mara has very little division within herself between reality as it is and reality as she wants it to be. She is so confident in her centuries of purpose and planning that Riven finds her unappetizing. Riven cannot feed off Mara because she is so set in, I know exactly what's going to happen, and it's going to happen exactly the way I want it. And so there's nothing to feed off of there for Riven. And Mara becomes as much curiosity for Riven as Riven is for Mara. And they kind of enter this symbiotic relationship of, like, Riven's going to do what Mara asks just to kind of be around her and figure out, like, how the hell she ticks. And Mara is very much using, Riven, although she has a fondness for her in the same way that one would have a fondness towards I don't want to say a pet, because she's more intelligent than that, but there's a very interesting kind of friendship there. But no, no, not at all. Yeah, it's two unmeasurable forces, highly intelligent, unmeasurable forces, just sticking around each other to see what happens. Now, Mara knows that Riven can't feed off her, and so she made herself the only one. She dictated as queen that she was the only one allowed to talk to Riven. Aldrin especially was forbidden from having any dealings with the Ahamkara whatsoever, because if it could feed off anyone that has a want, it was him. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Enemy
Yeah.
claimed Zone B. You captured Zone A. You have advantage.
Yeah, Mara identified immediately. After he brought her this little creature, she's like, oh, thank you, this is wonderful, never talk to this again. So,
Just took the lead. You captured Zone B.
so
You have
I
zone
include a couple lines here that are around the same time period as receiving, that she has Riven, that are an interaction between her and Sir Ido. I will probably repeat this if and when we do a Sir Ido episode, because not only does it inform on their relationship, but it also informs how the Awoken people viewed Mara at the time. Yep. Yes. Yep. And I've got those in here if we're on the same wavelength. So Sir comes to Mara, and paraphrasing a bit, says, the Awoken people and the Techians view you as a god, for there is no difference. But there's no difference for you between what is and what is to be.
Zone B.
Thus
lost.
you are a god now, as you will one day become one, and godhood is not temporal. So should I be worshipping you?
You captured
Is the
Zone
question
C.
posed
Zone
from Sir
advantage is yours.
to Mara. Like, because you will one day be a god, and godhood is not tied to the the flow of time, you are technically
Zone A
now
lost.
one. Should I be worshipping you as a deity? And I want to set the stage a little bit for this bit. So Mara, as we know her, a very stoic figure, a very she always has a mask on of some sort. She's always veiled,
You captured
very
Zone B. Zone
very
advantage
private,
is
very
yours.
holds the cards close to her chest. She likes the mystery, as we've said. But in this scene, it's a very different Mara. So upon hearing this, Mara kneels, taking Sir's face in her shaking hands. Mara is trembling, saying, Sir, on the day you worship me, you can no longer love me, for to worship is to wield all power, and I cannot love that which has no power over me.
Zone B lost.
So, I interpret this as, like, the thought to Mara of being worshipped by Sir, by being worshipped by this person that she has entrusted so much in both a, like we said, in a romantic relationship as well as just in a friendship. She's saying, like, if you see me as above you, then I truly have nobody.
Zone C lost. Enemy has
And
your
it's
zone. You captured Zone A.
yes, yep. Yes, yeah. By all, everything in title, by all things other than title, they're, yeah.
You captured Zone C. Zone advantage is yours.
Mm-hmm.
Zone A lost. You
It was
captured Zone B.
a
You have
big,
zone
one of the very
advantage.
few moments of
5 minutes.
vulnerability for Mara's character, where I
What will
really
stop
think
you if you fight
all of
together?
the pomp and circumstance, all of the disguises, all of it was gone for that conversation,
Shut them down.
and that was truly her kind of pleading with her in a way to, like, don't view me like this. And so Sir
Tell
more or
them to
less
line up
responds,
faster.
well, then you will not be a god to me. Essentially saying, like, I will always have a want to view you through the eyes of this relationship, not through the eyes of worshiper and worshipee. So Riven is literally in the room with him at the time, and I don't know that anything... There are threads to be made here, but it is, I think, the only time that we actually see Riven feed off Mara, because it's the only time that she has a want that she essentially doesn't believe is set in stone.
Shut the enemy down. Zone C captured. You have zone advantage. Zone A lost.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Three minutes left.
Yeah. 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 So zooming out a little bit. So this is where I'm going to breeze over a couple of things, just in the sake of time, as well as, you know, they're important, but not to the story we're telling right now, or not as important to the story we're telling right now. So time passes. We're unsure how much, probably generations at this point, and the Fallen are leading a full-scale attack on Earth. This is what turns into the Battle of Six Fronts. Every Fallen house has essentially signed up with each other to attack the last city all at once, and all of the houses are there except the House of Wolves, and the House of Wolves has to go through the Reef to get to Earth to join the battle. Mara knows this, and she, even through all these generations, her and her people, the Reefborn, still have that underlying mission of, we are here to help the universe. We are here to help humanity. And this is one of the times that they act out in service to that mission. And they specifically attack the House of Wolves and prevent them from joining the fallen forces on Earth, which does prevent the fall of the city. If the House of Wolves had joined, it is all but certain that the city would have fallen that day. Yeah. It's a lot of what I consider, so I think some of this is thinly veiled coincidence. I think so, I really do. I think that, and I would need to look more into the Reef Wars and the Battle of Six Fronts specifically, which I did not do for this. That's its own thing. Yep. I have a feeling that Mara had a hand in directly or indirectly guiding the House Wolves having to need to go through the Reef, and then use that as an excuse to attack them. I do not think it was pure coincidence. Yes. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. There's a couple threads that I think point to that, but I would need to actually look into it before I, you know, stake a claim there. But regardless, they do pass through the Reef. They are attacked by the Awoken. This begins the Reef Wars of the Awoken versus Skolas of the House of Wolves. The Reef is victorious, and Mara becomes the Kell of the House of Wolves for a time by proving her superiority over the previous Kell. Essentially, yes, that's where they came from.
Captured Zone B. You have advantage.
Yep. Yep. All of the Fallen in the Reef during D1 are the House of Wolves that are recognizing her as their Kell because she proved her strength over Skolas in that battle. So now, between this and the main big story point of Mara, all of the events of D1 prior to the Taken King happen. Our Guardian is canonically resurrected at this time, goes through its escapades with the Exo Stranger and the Vex and the Black Garden and all that good junk, and meets Mara for the first time in search of the Black Garden. Mara and Aldrin assists with, the Dark Below happens. Crota is killed. Assists with the. Yes, nobody knows that at the time. I don't think anyone knows that at the time.
Zone B lost.
No.
They have advantage.
But yeah, he and Mara and yep. But and that's one of the reasons.
You have zone advantage.
Oh yeah, she absolutely knows. That is one of the reasons why during D1, Aldrin is so. I mean, he's already at this point kind of distrusting of humanity in general. He never came because of the mission. He never came because of the make a better place for humanity. And remember, all the way back,
Captured Zone B.
just to follow his sister, because he's always following his sister.
Zone B lost.
Yeah. Because if you look all the way back to Exit Screen, and the vote to do we turn around and help or do we keep going and become a separate entity from humanity, he voted keep going. He voted abandon them. Mara voted stay. And he's still on that mindset. He's still on the they made their bed, now they're gonna lie in it. He's just here because Mara's here. So he has inherent disdain towards the Earthborn, but also, right. Yes. Yep. Right? Yeah. So, and when you approach Aldrin in-game for the first time, it's to go to the Black Garden and, quote-unquote, defeat the heart of the Black Garden, the Dark Heart. And we do not know it at the time. Even in D1, I don't think this was in D1 lore cards. I think this was only added in D2. But at this point in time, Aldrin's been there. He's seen the shit there, and it's affected him. And he's... Again, whole other episode, but he's. I think we save that. I think we save that for an Aldrin/Crow dedicated episode. Needless to say, he's seen some shit. It affected him in a lot of ways, and now he has some punk ass Guardian coming up to his revered sister saying, "Hey, I'm gonna go kill this thing." Right? Right, and... Right, well, I'm gonna do it, and then we do. But this... The whole interaction between our D1 Guardians and the Sovs kind of is the starting point for Mara to realize what Guardians are capable of. Is the starting point for her to realize the role they may play in some of her future endeavors. that's why she specifically reaches out for the assistance in the recapture of Skolas. Essentially, it's all a test. It's all a like, let's see what they can really do. Because I want to know where they're gonna fit in on my chessboard of the universe, essentially.
Zone B captured. You have zone advantage. That shut them down.
Yes.
Falling behind. Zone B lost. Enemy has advantage.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. In more ways than one. But we have to remember that not only Mara is doing other things other than what our Guardian's interactions with her are at this time. And so prior to the invasion of Oryx, Mara has a dream. And her dream, I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's very lengthy. But so to pull out the relevant bits, and I really strongly recommend reading all of the Tyrannicide cards, because they essentially explain everything to do with Mara and Oryx and all of that. But so she dreams, and it states, "I dreamt of the sword and the bomb. I dreamt that the sword was death and rule, and sought out complexity, and cut it to reveal the simplicity within. I knew that we, the Awoken, would be cut as we were complex and full of secrets, and I knew that I had to stop it." So what she's dreamed of is essentially a representation of the sword logic. I don't know if it's literally Oryx that she has seen, but essentially that's what it ends up being. So she has dreamed of Oryx, or a representation of Oryx, as this dark, unstoppable reaper of a force that is a near perfect representation of the sword logic of, the only answer is to kill until you are the only thing left. And Mara talks a little bit about the sword versus the bomb. We touch sword logic versus bomb logic here. So, sword logic.
You have zone advantage.
No, go for it. Go for it. Go wild.
Your enemy can't kill if they're dead. Your enemy is pushing for victory. Punish them for it. Zone B lost. They have advantage. 1 minute. You captured Zone B. Zone advantage is yours.
Yes, I think that is absolutely what those are representing.
You've got 30 seconds. Zone B C locked. Enemy has advantage. Your enemy has defeated you.
Yes.
No, not this time. Controlling those zones is the only path to victory.
Mm-hmm. Yes. No, not at all. Yeah, I really liked a line in particular in there, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it's that a bomb is made of many pieces, and to look at any one of those pieces on their own, they seem mundane, unpowerful, but it's only with the combination of those that it now can overcome, anything. Essentially, is the theory here. But she sees the Awoken people as complex. They are, by design, she has made them into a race of people that relies on mystery and relies on secrets, and that is kind of the ultimate antithesis to the idea of sword logic of the simplest finite thing. And so she knows that the Awoken are in danger of this coming Reaper of the Darkness.
Control.
Yes, and so she immediately is thinking now, like, how can a bomb, how can she make use of this sword? How can the rule that separates life from death be killed? Is her exact words. So, and she does a number of things to try and figure out what she's supposed to do. And say one of the things she does is she goes to the Oracle engine,
Enemy claims zone A.
which I'm going to take a little tangent about the Oracle engine because it's kind of cool.
Enemy claims zone B.
Okay, go for it. Yep. So the Oracle engine is, when we're in game, is that thing in the Dreaming City that we put an offering into, spins around and does all that, and sometimes lets us into where Mara's throne is. The Oracle engine was not something constructed wholly by the Awoken. It was actually something that was created. So the Awoken built the Dreaming City. Mara, with the power of Riven, have built the Dreaming City kind of in its own space. It's wish magic. It exists outside of the powers of the universe. And the powers of the universe, as it turns out, have a voice. And they're not terribly happy about the Dreaming City existing.
You gained the lead.
And what we're referring to here...
Zone C locked.
Right? So what we're referring to here, I took it to be as the 9. As the first interaction between Mara and the 9. And the 9, essentially... Mara feels in the psychic link she has with her Techians that they are in distress, severe distress. And so she...
You captured zone B.
Well, that her Techians are in distress, because the 9 are siphoning through them. Because she comes out, and all of the Techian, the witches, are like hovering off the ground, and they have blood pooling from their eyes and their mouths and their ears. And the voice of the 9 is coming through the Techians into Mara's head. They're like using them as a conduit to talk to Mara, who they've somehow identified as the cause of all of this. I don't know if they can see that in the Techians' minds or something, but...
Now hold.
So this is
Zone A lost.
like full on Exorcist, like yeah. Yep. Not just her head, but like yeah. And the nine are essentially saying as the consciousness of the soul system, essentially, which we'll have an episode for them too. They're we'll have to replay. Yeah, the nine are collectively as the consciousness of the solar system, kind of accusing Mara of like, what have you done? Why are you here? Who gave you the right? And so she, she's very careful about how she speaks with them, but she makes a bit of a mistake. She sees all of her witches floating, clearly in pain and being abused by this entity, and questions, do you mean to do violence? And the nine take that as an insult, as in like, who are you to question what we do? Violence in their view is purely relative. It's purely like, what they consider violent is very different than what she would consider violent. And so in a way of acquiescing to her request, but at the same time showing their force, they let all of the Techians go except for one. And that one is the All-Mother, who I've already forgotten how to say her name. There you go. Keldawaj. And as they're speaking to Mara, they're disintegrating Keldawaj in front of her. Atom by atom, molecule by molecule, she is being dissolved away. Yeah.
Zone C lost.
Yeah, the nine literally take this Techian, dissolve her body away, and turn her into a little self-contained black hole, event horizon, that doesn't affect anything around it. Doesn't do any damage to anything around it. It's just in and of itself a thing that's there that used to be the most respected Techian. Yep. And I mean, well, and I wonder, because so eventually what happens is the singularity becomes the core of the Oracle engine. They literally build the Oracle engine around the singularity to contain it and to use it, and we don't know how the Oracle engine works, but my question, the thing I wonder is when we're making an offering to the Oracle engine, is that just now a conduit for the nine to tell us things? Because the Oracle engine reveals truths, essentially. So is it the nine that is revealing those truths through the singularity, or is there some kind of sentience to the singularity itself that is revealing this information? Right, it doesn't go anywhere. Mara's throne room, which is different. Yeah. No. That is its... So... No. No. That was not my taking of it. So... The... It is absolutely teleporting you from point A to point B. I am of the opinion, and I have no solid evidence to support this, I am of the opinion, because of how they phrase it, because they say it is a singularity, that is not in our that is not in our universe. That is similar to the distributary, a pocket in and of itself inside of a singularity.
1 minute. You have this.
It just, it seems to line up for me.
You have zone advantage. Zone C lost.
Zor, you're about twice as loud as Myth. Just gonna mention that.
Seconds. Zone B captured. You have advantage. Zone A lost. You're beaten. This time.
I think there's legs to it. I don't know exactly what it means 100%, but I think there's some things to be explored. Yes. Mm-hmm. I guess I wouldn't be surprised either way, to be honest. Yeah. Throne room. Her own little pocket. Yep. So, well, I'm glad to have another in my crazy theories.
Control.
So I'm gonna reel it in a little bit again.
I know you can fight, but can you hold territory?
Don't do that. So we reel it back. So the Oracle engine is a thing that essentially all you need to know. Oracle engine is a singularity that Mara can use to, I don't know if tell the future is the correct term, but can try to understand more about the universe that she does not know. Through infuriating riddles. So she goes to the Oracle engine after having this dream about this coming sword, this coming emissary of the darkness, and asks the Oracle engine, what is this sword of death that she's dreamt about, and where would it appear? And rather than tell her, oh, right here on Saturn, instead, it shows her images.
advantage is yours.
Yeah. Yeah, just go there. So the images it shows her are of her family. It shows her Cyr, it shows her Aldrin, it shows her herself, and also shows her Osana, her mother, who stayed at the distributary. And as Mara tries to think through what this means, she does a lot of self-reflection on these people. She goes to the gardens within the Dreaming City and plants a flower for her mother, and essentially says to this flower everything she had kind of wished she said to Osana. You know, that she treated her as a sister instead of a mother, and she knows that she deprived her of the relationship a mother would have. And she feels remorse over that, and remorse that she never really expressed that she had love for her mother. And so she uses this as a time to kind of come to terms with that and say all that out loud. She then goes to...
Zone C lost.
Yeah, because... To recognize, yeah, that, like, that this was a relationship that... Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And so after she plants this flower, she goes to find Aldrin, one of the other images that she saw. But she finds he's gone on yet another adventure. All that's left are, you know, the signs that he lives in that room, but he himself is not there. And she kind of comments to herself on the fact that that's what their relationship has become, a siblinghood of chasing absences, is how she describes it. With remorse, but I think she also knows that's the way it has to be between them. But it doesn't mean that she's happy about it. And lastly, she goes to Cyr. And she approaches Cyr and tells her, you know, I'm going to be truthful. Ask me a question. Kind of... So just like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, oh, the math equation, yeah.
Zone A lost.
Yeah, she... I think she took it as a joke originally. She took it as, you know, as like, this is just the kind of banter they have, apparently. And Mara then, like, reinforces, like, no, this is a moment of me being open, you know. And so Cyr doesn't ask for any great secret, doesn't ask for, you know, doesn't ask for anything for herself other than, like, truly out of concern, tell me what is wrong. Tell me what is, you know, what is causing you such conflict. And so in a very, I think, in a scene with a lot of symbolism, back to Mara's origins, she takes Cyr out into the void of space, out on the reef, or I think it is the reef. They're wearing spacesuits and tethers, just like how she did in Exodus Green. And while they're out there with nobody around, other than the blackness of space that she once enjoyed so much, she admits to Cyr everything, essentially. That she was the first in the distributary. She confirms what we had suspected in our first part one of all this. She was first, and by her design, Alice Lee thought that Alice was first, and that essentially everything Alice did was by the designs of Mara herself, and that everything that has ever happened to the Awoken from the inception of the Distributary, good or bad, is all on Mara. And she tells her all this somewhat fearfully. I wouldn't say somewhat. She tells all of this fearfully that Sierra is going to have the same reaction that Alice Lee did, that she's going to be condemned by the sole person in the universe that she trusts the most. That Sierra is going to you know, say that's unforgivable. But she doesn't. She reprimands her. She reprimands her.
Zone A lost.
You are the devil.
You captured Zone C. Zone advantage is yours.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, for...
Zone B lost.
Right. Oh...
2 for 1. Triple down. Finish.
But
You captured
but
Zone B. You have
Sir
zone
does, and we'll never know, you know, we don't know what the internal thoughts are, but the spoken word is that she internalizes that question. You know, Sir does. Sir kind of like mulls it over and comes to the conclusion that if Mara hadn't done what she had done,
victory well executed.
nothing that Sir had experienced, Sir would not exist in the same way she does now. And she takes kind of a different perspective versus like Alice Lee was very much focused, and even Sir was back when she was part of the factions in the Distributary, very much focused on this. We have been denied this great possibility. You know, you have killed the gods that we all could have been. Yes. And for someone as, I don't want to say radicalized, but for someone that believed that so wholeheartedly, to seek out revenge for their faction leader's death, as Sir was, to be faced with, you know, the true culprit, quote unquote, and for her to decide at that moment that if you hadn't done it all the way you did, I would not exist the way I exist now, and essentially come to the thought that like Sir wanted to exist in the way that she does now, like kind of in the sense of, you know, to get to this point, I guess you couldn't have done anything else.
Control. The zones are yours if you fight for them, Guardian.
Yes.
You captured Zone A.
And
Enemy claimed Zone C.
and so taking all this in, Seer eventually comes to say, you know, Mara, I don't think you've confessed anything at all, unless it were a way of keeping an even greater secret.
Zone advantage is yours.
So what's really going on? Right, so what's the real...
Zone A lost. Enemy has zone advantage. Lead is lost, but the battle is still close. Zone A captured. You have advantage.
Yeah. So Mara answers in, I think, the only way she really knows how, which Sir describes earlier as, you know, you explain things to people in a way that makes sense to you, knowing that it doesn't make sense to them. Yes. Words are cheap imitations at communication. So, and in this still moment of truth and transparency, Shur asks her, what is the deeper secret? What is really going on? And Mara answers, though not in a way that Shur understands. Shur admits that she, you know, essentially like, okay, you're being crazy again. But I'm gonna read just verbatim what Mara says. She tells her there are many ways to godhood. One way is to kill all that is killable, so that all that remains must be immortal. Another is the road that I have walked, mostly by accident. One of these ways is closer to the sword, and one is closer to the bomb. If the bomb can defeat the sword by the standard of the sword, then the bomb has claim to primacy. So, what she has essentially done... Yeah, pretty much. She kind of hand waves it away. What is absolutely brilliant about this statement is that Mara has told Seer the truth. She has told her exactly what her plan is. She has explained in these few sentences some of the greater mysteries of the universe in Destiny. It's just Seer is not in a position to recognize it. But she is... Yeah.
Zone C lost. Enemy has zone advantage.
Yeah. Whatever. You're... yeah. Yeah. So that is... Mara has laid out her plan for Seer and for us, the player, and now we get to see it act out. So the night before Oryx arrives in the system, you know, time has passed at this point. There's no exact timeline between when she has this dream and when Oryx actually arrives, but it's implied that she has the dream prior to us ever interacting with her. Like, she has known Oryx is coming for long before the Guardians ever made contact with her.
5 minutes remaining. Your enemy has a power play.
Yeah.
I've seen enough. I'm calling this one.
So it's now the night before Oryx arrives in the system, and Mara is meditating on what's to come.
You're defeated.
And she kind of too is thinking back on the plans she has laid up till now, and she's
You'll get it.
come to this idea of you cannot defeat a thing that is synonymous with death except on its own territory. So she knows she can't beat Oryx as she is currently. She says you cannot fear and flee from death, you must face it. Death is a sword, and a sword is a crossing point. Like a bridge may be walked two ways. So she is the imagery that's happening here for my interpretation is she is intentionally going to offer herself to death, to Oryx in this case, to be, you know, if we're sticking with the imagery here, to be stabbed by the sword, and in the act of being stabbed, the sword is connecting her to Oryx. It is acting as a bridge between the two. Yeah, yeah.
Control.
I have to risk losing the game, essentially.
Take those zones, Guardian.
Yeah. So now I said that we're not going to dive into the Shattered Throne, and we're not. But it is important to note that part of her preparations for all of this was the creation of the Shattered Throne.
Enemy claims zone C.
And the Shattered Throne is an ascendant plane, a throne world for Amara herself, and it is, I think, the only one built not using sword logic. And it was built as a combination. It's described as a ascendant plane built out of darkness for the light, and is built through a combination of Mara, Riven, and Eris, as well as the Techians. And the blind well powers the portal that opens it. But that's and it was called Eleusinia, was what Mara named it. I believe it may come up with that as the name for the area when you first enter. Before it starts to give you the different names of the areas that you progress through. I think that's like the original name as you open the doors. But so just know for the future, Shattered Throne was created during this time as Eleusinia to be Mara's throne world.
Zone C lost. Enemy has zone advantage.
Now, nobody knows all of Mara's plan, except for Mara. Eris knows most of it, mostly because she figured it out herself. And others only know bits and pieces. The Techians know some of it. Aldrin knows almost none of it. And say that she's only told people what she needs them to know, essentially. Eris, to her credit, is the only one that has kind of figured out roughly what's going on. But Mara's the only one that knows everything. And she refers to a fable, which I neglected to write down what culture it comes from. I want to say it was Indian or something along those lines. But a fable of Inanna, who descended into the underworld. And I specifically highlighted this bit because it actually connects to the Glycon. Was Inanna afraid when she descended? Mara's not going to be outclassed by some ancient fable. After all, Mara's name is death. But there is one thing she admires most about Inanna over all other myths of Catabases. Inanna went to conquer. So Catabases, literally meaning descent into hell in Greek, and also being the name of the ill-fated guardian on the Glycon of Callus. So no direct tie there, but it was a fun little Easter egg, I thought. Yeah.
Zone C lost. They have advantage.
Yep.
Zone B lost.
So,
Power play.
we now go to the scene that we all know from D1, well, all those that played it. Oryx destroys the Awoken fleet. The Awoken rush at Oryx under the command of Mara. She shoots the Harbingers at his Dreadnought. Dreadnought seemingly unaffected by them.
You captured Zone B.
Oryx
Zone A captured.
literally
Zone
pushes
advantage
his
is
throne world out into the existence of the solar system, and by doing so, destroys the entirety of the Awoken fleet, Mara's ship included. At this point, it's referenced that the Techians have set up an ability for them to essentially teleport back to the Dreaming City, which they called Rift Gates. And the Techians, not knowing all of Mara's plan, they activate their Rift Gates to abandon ship before it's destroyed by this pulse that Oryx has let out. And I believe it's I believe it's Shirochi. Now you got me doing it. Who reaches out for Mara on their telekinetic level, mentally as well as physically, like reaches out for Mara, saying, come with me through the rift gate, and Mara refuses her and chooses to die, chooses to be hit by this attack from Oryx. The reason why, and then she does. The reason why that specific interaction is important, though. Again, not going to get into Shattered Throne, but the telekinetic, the telekinesis happening between Shirochi and Mara at that point is still open when Oryx hits Mara. And by nature of that connection being open, that is what Oryx uses to identify what the Dreaming City is, where the Dreaming City is, and where the Shattered Throne are. If Shirochi had never reached out to her, it's likely Oryx would never have found either of those places. So,
3 minutes.
Yeah, she dies. She's gone. She's atomized. Her... Mm-hmm. No. No. She's gone. Yeah. It was an intentional choice. And she uses, so at this point her body is atomized, and this is where we get a little uncertain with exactly what's happening. I'm going to refer to it as her soul, for lack of a better term. But she is now...
You captured Zone B. Zone
yeah.
advantage is yours.
Yes, yeah, no, that's a good way to look at it. So her consciousness now exists outside of, separated from her body, which is no longer exists. And she uses the harbingers that were fired at the dreadnought. They've apparently dealt enough damage to open a gateway into the Ascendant Plane through Oryx's throne world. And she uses essentially she uses the energy wave from Oryx alongside the metaphysical damage done by the Harbingers as her gateway into Oryx's throne world, into Oryx's space of the Ascendant Plane. Yes, she's used Oryx's sword as a bridge into Oryx's Ascendant Plane. And she just kind of bunkers down there. She is, I guess, to think about what she is at this point, she's like that little floating ball that Toland is. I think that's a very good way to think about it. She is just pure consciousness, and she is bunkered down for the long haul. She doesn't know how long she's going to need to be there. She doesn't know truly what's going to happen to her. She is gambling that Eris and the Guardians will be able to kill Oryx.
10 seconds. You're beaten.
Right?
This time.
I guess it'll work for me. And she describes it. She describes her plan as it is on that level a very simple bank heist. Get yourself taken into the treasury as a treasure, and then when the owner dies, break out with all his stuff. She goes on to say the Guardians will play their part. When the power in this world is free for the taking, Mara will take it, not as the victor taking spoils, but as a scavenger takes a prize component for her masterwork. And I think that's important. She doesn't want to be the Taken Queen. She doesn't want to usurp Oryx, although she would have the opportunity to do so. She wants something that Oryx has for her grander plans. And she uses a chess reference here. She says, when a pawn reaches the far side of the chessboard, it may be promoted to a queen. And what hatches when you promote a queen? What new board does she claim her place on? Mara knows. We don't quite know what she means here. Yep. Yep. But the fact that she knows, and what's implied here is that we as the player don't know, we as the reader don't know, but it says Mara knows. She knows what the next step is. She knows what the next chessboard is that she will evolve herself to be on. I don't think we've seen the fruition of what that is. Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know if she literally means a higher battle, if she's implying that there's a higher battle than the Battle of Light and Dark, or if she just means
Should we begin then?
so
Time to fight, Guardian. What do you need? Hopefully, this is as sturdy as you are. needs sharpening. Don't stray too long.
Your examiners are shining. Can't see if
I'd be right there with you if these rookies could just learn to fight by themselves.
So, I don't disagree, but my personal interpretation, and I don't necessarily have anything to back this up other than just Mara's personality and her history and what we've seen her do and talk about. I think that Mara wants to. I think the chessboard Mara wants to ascend to is she wants to become the third entity. I think that her intention is there's light and there's dark, and the Awoken are a combination of the two. She doesn't want to be in the battle of light and dark. She wants to be the third. She wants to be the gray, essentially. She wants to be on the same level as the light and the dark are. Yeah. Personally, I feel like that's her ultimate goal, for her to be the gray between the white and the black. But we'll find out in time, hopefully. But coming back, we'll reel in our theories a little bit. Coming back to the story at hand, Mara is currently in Oryx's throne world, bunkered down as just a little ball of consciousness, waiting out the storm, and everything in the solar system has gone to shit, essentially. The Awoken, all the Awoken know, because she never told anyone her plan, other than, I guess, Cyr, who is not around anymore at this point in time. Their queen is dead. Their deity-like queen is gone. And the Reef is now leaderless, the Dreaming City is now leaderless, and they are scrambling. Just to read a couple bits about kind of the devastation that is happening to the Awoken people, because me personally, I didn't feel this playing through the game. I don't feel like it was communicated through the game exactly what the Awoken people were going through at this time, even leading all the way up to Forsaken, honestly. Immediately, shortly following the death, quote unquote, of Mara, hive seeders are being sent out in waves of tens and hundreds, attaching themselves to populated areas of the Reef. Hive seeders are those pods that you see in like the Cosmodrome and whatnot. There are hive like spawning pods, essentially. The Awoken.
You captured Zone B. Zone
Navoda,
advantage is yours.
Yep. That's a hive seeder. Yeah. So these hive seeders are spawning out from Oryx's ship and his fleet, attacking the Reef, attaching to all the populated areas of the Reef. Awoken are scattered and fleeing in the wake of their queen's death. Petra, who has been named to the point of Queen's Wrath at this point, she is the replacement for Cyr in that position. In the way that I think we talked about, in the way that only a Queen's Wrath can be, she is unshakingly confident that Mara is still alive. But yeah, she promised that she would that she would protect
Zone
the
A
Awoken.
captured. Zone advantage
She
is
believes in her wholeheartedly, but also can see the devastation happening around her, and knows that the Awoken need a place to go back to. They need to retreat, and she goes to the Tangled Shore, and sees to her relief that the spire in the Tangled Shore that acts as the bridge between the Soul System and the Dreaming City is still standing, is still untouched, and she, as regent, excuse me,
Zone C lost.
regent commander, starts to lead the Awoken people that she can gather up back to the Dreaming City. Things are happening within the Dreaming City as well during this time. Within the Dreaming City, the Techians are trying to find their sisters. So some of the Techian sisters
You captured
didn't
Zone
quite
B.
make it
Zone
out.
advantage is yours.
It does reference, I believe it's the Techians that were with Mara, or at least some of them that were with Mara at the time in the ship. Because they mention... Yes.
Zone A lost. You captured
I know,
Zone
I do
C.
too.
You have advantage.
Sadia? Is it Sadia? Yes, yes. So... Yeah, my interpretation of this, and I don't know that it specifically states anywhere, but my interpretation of this is that those were the three that left through the Rift Gate to survive physically when Mara was
Zone A
atomized.
captured. You
But the
have
connection that they had
advantage.
open with Mara, again, Oryx saw that, and he used that connection to literally invade them. He took them via their connection, their mental connection with Mara. They have been, and okay, this is a fun little bit that I do want to talk about when we get there. But my interpretation is that they were taken by Oryx, not post Oryx. My interpretation is also that Riven was taken by Oryx after reading through this.
Zone A lost. Your enemy has a power play.
So we're gonna get to that. But so the surviving Techians, mainly led by Ilan at the time, are trying to reconnect with their sisters.
5
Like
minutes.
they talk about now that Mara's dead, as far as they're concerned,
Zone B lost.
her, like, the voice of Mara is no longer present in their heads, and they're used to constantly having this connection with her, and that's gone. And it's now they're hearing like whispers and screams, and they can hear their sister Techians through this like mental connection in pain and anguish, and so they're trying to reach out to them. They're trying to find them, and the way that they're doing that is through the Taken and through artifacts of the darkness. It doesn't explicitly state what they're using, but it does call it a sphere of spinfoil metal. My initial thought... my initial thought... Right? Yeah. Yep. I just use... So my initial thought after hearing that it was a sphere, and I read it over a couple times, I'm not 100% sure, but when I first saw, oh, sphere of darkness, essentially, like they called it a dark mirror of the Traveler, was, hey, we've seen something like that in the pyramid ships, the little orb artifact that we get. So it's possible they had one of those, if that is what's being referenced here. But there's enough left up for interpretation
Enemies
that I
almost
don't
won.
know for sure that that's what they had. But regardless,
Minutes left.
true, yeah. The blights. It could very well be. Maybe they contained a blight in a sphere of some sort, and that would make sense as well. That would probably make more sense, honestly. I like that interpretation. But they're using this, whatever it is, to
Zone A lost.
kind of touch on the darkness and try to reach out to their sisters. And they described this as the Techians came to make use of the Desolates, items of technology imbued with the husk-dry power of Oryx's Taken. Ilin was the first to stand as living conduit, the first of the Techians to use that deep interior fault line, that fundamental Awoken schism, as a bridge. So the Techians have identified the split between light and dark within themselves and can access those sides separately to some degree, is what it seems. She's using her dark half to commune with this dark orb to reach out and find her sisters. And she makes a mistake. She forgets she's in the Dreaming City. And she calls out to her sisters, and in calling out to them, remembers what life was like prior to all of this, and has the want for life to return to how it was. And Riven eats that shit up. So I wonder, it could be true here, it could be, an argument can also be laid that these events happen later, but I wonder if Riven feeding on Techians that are connected to the darkness, it gave Oryx the opening to take her. I would agree, yes.
Control.
Well, and even the state of the Shattered Throne, as we find it, is Oryx's handiwork, not Savathun's. I interpret it as Savathun took advantage of the chaos Oryx had wrought, and once he was gone, she went, oh well, I'm not just gonna leave all of this perfectly good, stuff. Yes, I think it's exactly what it was.
Enemy claimed Zone C. Enemy claimed Zone B. They have advantage.
Yeah. I think... Yes. Yep.
Zone A lost. Power play. Enemy has your zones.
Nope. I think Savathun... No, I think Savathun purely saw it as a moment of opportunity. I
Zone B captured.
so yes.
Zone A captured. You have advantage. Zone B lost. Enemy has advantage.
No. Yep. So yeah, and I have some theories on that. I wanna finish up this little bit with the Techians first, because there's an important statement here, or a statement that I thought was suspicious in how it was worded. So while they're under attack, they're being consumed by Riven. It says Ilin was prepared for taken, folded perfect things, elegant and thus manageable, but this absolute appetite, this impossible will. She speaks the secret word of stasis that will crash their augments and end the communion. She does not know if she is in time. That's a very particular word to use. Stasis?
Zone C lost. Your enemy has a power play. Zone B captured.
The halt of time, the...
Zone A captured.
We're stopping the entropy of that thing. We are making the universe simpler by using stasis.
I've seen enough. I'm calling
Yep.
this one. Your enemy has defeated you. No, not this time. Controlling those zones is the only path to victory.
She's not even human. She doesn't have any biological bits. Like, she just has her consciousness. Oh. So, I think so too. I think that is the Techians have figured out how to use dark powers, use stasis as a form of dark power, and this is our first hint that that is a thing. So, as we know, the Guardians take down Oryx. That Mara now uses his absence as her gambit has paid off, and she how to describe this? She walks the ascendant plane between throne worlds. She leaves Oryx's throne world in this state of just consciousness that she is. She leaves Oryx's throne world, having taken what she needed from it, having plundered what was left of it, and forms. So as she's walking across the planes between throne worlds, she comes in contact with Toland and kind of bitch slaps him. Toland's very full of himself and is like, well, who the hell are you to be in this plane that I know everything about? And she's like, dude, you don't know. You have no idea. And Toland essentially like runs away like a little bitch. And Mara continues on until she reaches Eleusinia, what we know as the Shattered Throne, and in her time reaching this place, she has reconstructed her body. She has reconstructed a physical presence of herself. It's not on a molecular level. It is not her body as it was, but she has made it to look how she once did. She reaches the Shattered Throne, and again, not going to go too in depth in it, but discovers that Oryx had found the Shattered Throne, her throne world, and had sullied it, had corrupted it, and laid waste to it, and which was not part of her plan, and decides that she cannot stay there, and that, I think, is the moment when she decides to take refuge in the singularity within the Oracle engine. That was her backup, essentially. And then we kind of play the rest of the interactions with her. We meet with her on a weekly, well, every 3 weeks basis, tri-weekly. Is tri-weekly 3 times a week or every 3 weeks? Right.
Zone C lost. Power play. Enemy has your zone.
Grammar aside, every 3 weeks we meet with her to have a little discussion. A lot of it is very interesting, but not very revealing at the same time. Yeah, essentially, she knows of her brother's death at our hands. She knows that he was used by Riven. All of the things that we played through with Forsaken, which I'm not going to go over in great detail, mostly for the sake of time. However, there are a couple things I want to touch on that I feel are not communicated very well in the game outside of the lore cards that are super, super interesting. And that is essentially that the state of the Reef is a wreck. The state of the Awoken in general is a wreck. The Awoken, after the Queen is gone, they are once again a refugee people. Thrice Riven. That's what it is, yeah. This is where the spider comes to power. The spider takes up his location on the Tangled Shore. It starts wheeling and dealing because he sees these Awoken people as an opportunity. He starts trading work from them. Hey, deliver this. Hey, get me this. Hey, do XYZ, and I'll offer you protection. I'll offer you a place to stay while your civilization is crumbling from Oryx and the Hive and the fallout of the Taken War. And a lot of them take him up on that. A lot of them, use whatever means they need to survive. And there was a particular interaction that I thought was very interesting between Cade, Zavala, and Petra. In a couple different ways. So, Cade recognizes that the Awoken people are in need of help. And so he sets up a meeting with Zavala and Petra in the hopes of organizing the Awoken coming to the city as a safe haven. Petra... No.
You wage war like a true titan.
Yes.
That's a power play. You took them, now hold them.
He is trying to do for the Awoken in this time what Ikora did for the Elixni this season. However, Zavala is a different person at the time that Cade, or has a very different mindset at the time that Cade is trying to establish this refugee camp. Yes and no. Not on that level, and for very different reasons. So, Zavala is an Awoken, but he has a deep-seated, I don't want to say hatred, but he as a leader, as a very different kind of leader than Mara, thinks that she essentially does things in the wrong manner as a ruler. He sees her as, I don't want to say incompetent, but he thinks her decisions actively harm her people. And to him and his character, that is unacceptable. You know, to him, a leader should be somebody that puts their citizens, their wards above themselves in every instance. He is very self-sacrificing in that way. And he doesn't, I mean, nobody does, understand that Mara has a very similar thought pattern, but does not carry it out in the same way. She is, you know, Zavala is much more, you know, if you have to lose 10 to save 100, his answer will be, well, just save them both. Where Mara's will be the more calculated, you know, lose the 10. So he's butted heads with the Awoken a lot over the millennia, you know, over the hundreds of years that they've both existed at this point. Yeah.
3 minutes. Hold
right.
strong, and this battle is yours. Zone B lost. They have advantage.
You're...
Your enemy can't kill if they're dead. Keep it up, and victory is yours.
Your nature persists through resurrection. Your true nature persists through resurrection. So Cade sets up this meeting. Zavala agrees begrudgingly. Neither him nor Petra expect this to go well, but they're gonna do it because it's Cade. I say she's yeah. She's like, I'm gonna.
Captured Zone C. Your enemy has defeated.
She's ready to be the Mara surrogate, essentially. And so through their discussion, she fails in being as cold and stoic as Mara is, and gets heated, and all because Cade shows up. Yeah. Yeah. So I thought this was interesting though, because it grants a perspective I hadn't seen before. So she in her heated exchange with Zavala says, at least Cade is honorable enough to acknowledge what you've done to us, the Awoken. Every fallen house you shatter washes up on our shores. Every hive god and cabal tyrant you attract goes through us to get to you. No wonder she couldn't stand the sight of you, Zavala. You've forsaken your people. The Awoken people, and the you in that sentence being Mara. Mara couldn't stand the sight of Zavala. And it's an interesting thought because I've never... They never really talk about it in game, and I've never thought about it, but literally every threat we've ever faced has to go through the Reef to get to us. Right, and so they're kind of hit coming and going, and just they have to deal with it. And I think right. Yep.
Control.
And then Zavala really pisses her off. He says, you know, we are the last city. We take any and all refugees under the one condition that if they are to come and seek asylum in the last city, they will become citizens of the last city and renounce their connection to the queen. And that is unfathomable to Petra. And it just it adds even more fuel to it, because Petra kind of says to herself during this exchange, like, she's of the mindset of, like, she knows what the original mission was. She knows the entire reason Mara and her people are out here fighting and dying was to protect that last city, was to be the shield that would help humanity continue, and to have and to have the leader of that city come to you and say your queen's full of shit. If you want our protection, then you need to renounce her. And it's such a huge slap to everything that they stood for.
Zone B lost. They've taken the lead. You can turn this tide.
Well, and to his credit, I don't think anyone other than the original Awoken that are still around understand that was the mission, that was why they're there.
It's a power play. Get those zones back. Zone A captured.
Right, like we're. Mm-hmm.
Zone B captured. You have advantage.
So, that kind of leaves us where we are right now in game, with the Dreaming City and the Cursed Cycle, and there's lots more to discuss with the Shattered Throne and all of that. But we're gonna leave that off for another episode. However, I wanted to end this particular one with one last bit of reading that I think is not necessarily relevant, but pretty damn hilarious, of a letter written between Master Rahul and Master Ives.
You have zone advantage.
So, yeah, do you have the first half? Because I only have the second half. I have Ives to Rahul. If you have Rahul to Ives, then yeah.
Zone
Okay.
B lost.
And to preface this is after the events of the Taken War, after the events of the Red War. Actually, Gaul has already, Gaul has come through. He's been defeated. The city is kind of picking itself back up, and in this time period is when Rahul is sending this message to the Cryptarch of the Awoken, Master Ives.
You captured Zone B. You have advantage.
Yes. Yep. He is in. It's hard to say, because he.
Zone A lost.
No, not all Cryptarchs are the same. Because in his letter, he says something along the lines of, like, you know, let's put aside this divide between us, which makes me think that he is Earthborn and contacting Ives, who is Reefborn, and I don't know if Rahul is.
Your enemy can't kill if they're dead.
Tyra Kane. Yep. Yes. Yes, but I do think that there's a distinction. That was Ives. That was Ives. That was Ives. Yeah. But yeah, I do think there's a distinction between Reefborn and Earthborn amongst the Cryptarchs, specifically because of these two letters. Yeah.
Only 5 minutes left. You captured Zone B. Zone advantage is yours. You captured Zone A. Power play. Keep the pressure on. Double down. Zone B lost. Zone B
So,
captured. Zone advantage is yours.
this letter is very academic. It's very, it's got some of that like backhanded complimenting to it a little bit, um, and is a perfect example of things I've seen actually written in academic environments. But
Zone B
the response from Master Ives, the Cryptarch of the Reef, to Rahul states, "Dear Master Rahul, we, the Cryptarchs of the Reef, appreciate your sympathy for the devastation that our people suffered in your defense. We likewise express our sorrow for your recent losses and, of course, apologize for the length of time it has taken us to respond to your requests. We were determined to give our reply the full deliberation it deserved. It is our unanimous consensus that you are vile, sir, that you are a grasping wretch, that you would attempt to use our misfortune to solicit access to our vaults and records, which I assure you are far more extraordinary than whatever half-eaten corruptions you've discovered among your ruins, is quite appalling. We will, however, happily review any data or records you believe would be of interest to our efforts. We also would be curious to know the reams of new discoveries. You'll also be curious to know the reams of new discoveries are being generated daily since your traveler cast out the last of its light to refuel your guardians. Let us hope you are wise enough to understand its message. With all the respect that is due,
Zone
Master
A lost.
Ives."
Your enemy has a power play. You captured Zone B. Zone C captured. You have zone advantage. Zone B lost. You're beaten. This time, 2 for 1. The zones are your life, Guardian. Keep fighting. You'll get it.
No. The Reefborn are the college doctorates, and they're viewing the Earthborn as the kindergarten, middle school grade. Like, that's cute. Yeah. But all right, well, I think that is a good point to stop for this one. That is the. Oh, yes, go right ahead. Teaser.
So much you'd never recognize it. Hi there. Bye. Saved my life. She's a Buddhist.
Let me know next time you want to watch it.
We have to act immediately. Red Legion is everywhere. Tell the Vanguard if they want better fighters on the front lines, they need to give me time.
Fight hard, Guardian. Doesn't help you or your opponents to go easy. The tower didn't deserve the Cabal attack, but we'll be stronger for it.
I can't believe how good that hunter looked in the Crucible last night.
Yep.
Why don't they do something?
She has certainly set herself up that way. Like, uh, so I'm really, really hoping, and that I do not have anything from leaks to quantify this. This is purely just me. So don't worry about spoilers. I'm really hoping that next season is a return of Mara, or in preparation of her return and dealing more with the Dreaming City, not only because we've been talking about this stuff, but because there are some hints here and there that's something that's going to happen here shortly. With her saying she's going to return on the voice recordings and on Zavala's desk during Season of the Hunt. So yeah, I'm excited for everything Awoken that's coming in the future.
The newsfeed, just a cover for the war call.
Mm-hmm.
This is no time for politics. The feed
Yep.
went down just as they were going to say who won.
Yeah. I, there's a lot going on there, and as much as I want to discuss it at length, I don't think we should make this episode longer than 3 hours.
He wasn't the same yesterday, was he?
Yeah. Yeah. In a lot of ways, I would agree. I really would. Yeah, I stand by the statement that they could yank the Maracena pure out of this game, do pretty much no editing to it, and just print that fucker, and it would sell as like a high fantasy book or as like a sci-fi fantasy book. It is that well written. It is that verbose and amazing in and of itself that I highly, highly recommend anyone that's even remotely interested in the stuff we were talking about go read that when you have a chance, because it is wonderful. I think that's a good idea. Do something different. Yeah.
They'll never make the deadline.
Yeah. Yep. Europa. No. I like that idea. Do a little break because we've had a lot of really heavy, dense stuff, and we can breathe a little. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, no, I like that plan. So tentatively, next episode will be Penguins of Europa, which will be a little lighter, probably not as long, a break from some of the super dense stuff, but still entertaining in its own right. And then yeah, we'll focus on uh, lore implications of the introduction of next season, as well as the 24th reveal on the Monday following those. So
Yep, that was
well,
another good
I'm
episode,
happy.
guys. Yeah.
Thank you. I quite enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, signing off.
I didn't even leave.